people, and I want you guys to enjoy the space that you're in, because this is a space where Black people come together and and have the kind of conversations that you don't see on TV. So today we have an interesting story about a single mother in Ohio who was arrested. Believe it or not, y'all, she was arrested because she left her kids at home, and her kids were 10 and 2. And I'm going to read some of the story to you. Her name is Shaina Bell. So the Shayna Bell case, it's really interesting. I'm reading from the UK Independent. It says a GoFundMe has raised almost $100,000 for a woman caught between the competing demands of pandemic parenthood. Shayna Bell, 24, was arrested while she was working at Little Caesars Pizzeria in Liberty Township, Ohio, on Thursday evening. Police say they found two of her daughters, age 2 and age 10, alone at a nearby Motel 6. Bell told the police she was having someone check the kids every hour and would be back by 10 p.m., but that wasn't enough. She was charged with 2 counts of child endangerment, to which she pleaded not guilty and spent the night in jail. That's when the internet stepped in. After local news outlets covered Bell's story, it gained sympathy, widespread sympathy online, including from a U.S. congressman. Before I read on into this, I want to mention the guests that I have today that are going to help me break this down. I have, first of all, Miss Zakia. Her show is called Real Talk with ZSJ,
right. Real Talk with ZSJ on YouTube.
Yeah, I never had dyslexia until now, so my
that's hilarious.
ZSJ, and also Jeff Lightsey Jr. from Ball Sports. What's going on, Jeff?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself, Dr. Boyce and Miss Zakia?
Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, so let's hop in here and let's talk about this. Okay, so Shayna Bell's arrested. Her 2 kids were left at the hotel. She was at work. She said she was checking on them every hour. The internet has come through with a lot of money for her. I don't know the status of her case, but Mrs. Zakia, ladies first, what say you about this whole situation?
So first of all, I empathize, right? I'm a Black woman. I'm comfortably so-called middle class now, but I used to be a poor, single, working class mom at one time in my life. And I feel an immense amount of sympathy for this Black woman. I've been writing a lot lately, particularly about education in schools. As you all know, that's my expertise in my area of professional work. And one of the things that I've highlighted in this conversation about keeping schools closed and no access to education, particularly, for children like this, especially the 10-year-old, is that no one is keeping in mind the invisible families, right? The families who are working class, the family who, and I say it all the time, the families who are keeping our restaurants open, the families who are keeping our grocery stores open, all of that have been left out of the conversation when it comes to this. And so I feel a deep amount of immense sympathy. And it also is not lost on me that we criminalize poverty in this country. So the response of this government to criminalize this mother who was working, right? Clearly, she's in a position, clearly she's in a position where she is unable to provide childcare and work for her children, right? She doesn't have a support system. And clearly we don't have a social safety net that's standing in the gap to support a family like this. So I think there's a number of different things that are wrong in this situation, particularly, and probably most egregious is the fact that she was criminalized.
Jeff, when I saw this story kind of go down, I'm going to admit that in addition to feeling bad for this poor mother, and I think she deserves every penny of that $100,000 that's been raised for her online. I wish they could give $100,000 to every mother that's out there. And I was born, when I was born, my mother, was struggling, really, really deep in the struggle. But I'll also say that when I heard about it, I'm not sure, y'all got to help me remember. To make a baby, does it take one parent or two? I can't remember if it takes them. Does it take just a female or a male and a female? Y'all remind me. I need help.
No,
it takes 2 to tango, right?
It takes 2 to tango.
Yeah. Okay, 2. That's right. It's like 1, 2, 3. No, just 2. Okay, got it. All right. So what about the daddy? Do we ever? Does anybody else give me a yes or no in the chat? Does anybody, when you see stories like this, do you ever wonder What's going on? Where's the daddy? Jeff, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, in terms of not even really judging the answer to that question one way or the other, but just what's the first thing that comes to mind when I even ask you a question like that? I even bring that up.
Well, yeah, it was the same thing I wondered too when I first initially read the story. And then one of the articles that I read was that when the kids were discovered by the police or whoever, it said they were taken to the father. So it was like, what happened in between the lady being arrested and the kids not initially being taken to the father or the father's family or whoever, you know? So I was kind of worried about that too, because it was a little strange. It's like, okay, you got the 10-year-old watching the 2-year-old, but the daddy is missing, right? Like he's nowhere to be found. I want to go back to something Ms. Zakia said though, and I think this is really critical that we have to really dive into, is that like she said, the schools are closed, right? You got to think about the way, I don't know if this happened during a weekday or a weekend or whatever, but schools are closed. Child care providers are closed right now, depending on what part of the country you live in and how much access you need to that. Like it's not available for everybody. So that is critical during this pandemic, because everybody doesn't have the luxury of having grandparents or be able to take their kid to work or miss days because of work. I mean, because their kid needs help at school, at home or whatever. So that is critical. Like that is a huge part. And that is another outlying factor of the pandemic. We know people, have lost their lives and a bunch of different things, jobs, businesses have been lost or whatever, but also the kids not being able to go to school, kids having to have school on Zoom, and parents not being able to have child care to watch over the kids during working hours. It's tough, and it's tough for everybody. But I was the dad part was definitely something that I was wary of as well, because it is something that it was kind of strange. It was kind of missing, besides the fact that when the authorities or whoever arrived, it seems like they took the kids to their dad, is what I read. I don't know if that's what anybody else read.
I read that too, somewhere said it. And so I would say to that, particularly because that was in the article, is that I don't want to do too much assuming, but it would seem that there may be not such a good relationship between the mom and the dad, and maybe they want to speak in terms, or maybe she's like, I got this, I don't need you, kind of thing. So I don't know. I just would, kind of be remiss not to just assume too much, because I don't want to victimize both of this family even more. But the fact that I did also read that in one of the articles that the children were taken to the father leads me to believe that the father is capable, I guess, to take care of the children. And there may just be bad terms between her and the father, and pride and things like that getting in the way. Listen, I've been through that. You know what I mean? Like I said, at one point I was divorced and single, and did not have a good relationship with my ex-husband. So, that kind of stuff happens, right? But I'm glad that the children are safe. I'm glad that she has raised the amount of money. I would caution though, GoFundMe cannot replace the responsibility of taxpaying citizens of the government to ensure that there's a social safety net, particularly in a pandemic. Shout out to everybody who has been generous. I've been very generous, during this pandemic, but I think that we have to be careful not to take the responsibility off of the government, particularly as tax-paying citizens. We pay a hell of a lot of taxes for needs of our citizens not to be taken care of.
Yeah, well, and everybody who just came in, I'm speaking with Miss Zakia, and give me your last name, Zakia. Zakia
Sankara Jabbar.
Zakia Sankara Jabbar.
Like Thomas Sankara, and then Jabbar is just a popular Muslim name, but Sankara Jabbar.
All right, so Zakia Sankara Jabbar and Jeff Lightsey Jr. We're talking about Shayna Bell. Shayna Bell was she is a 24-year-old single mother who was arrested this week for leaving her kids at home in a hotel while she went to work. She worked at I guess she works at Little Caesars, the pizza place, and I'll tell you what else I thought. I tend to just look at things in a weird way sometimes. I don't know if this is how different this is from everybody else, but I kind of like to go beyond the surface, right? And I think about Ohio. Ohio's a Republican state, which is pretty harsh on Black folks. Harsh.
I lived there for 20 years.
Yeah, tough on criminal justice. A few years ago, about 12 years ago, some of y'all may remember this, some of you don't. Most of you probably don't. But about 2009, I actually, back when I used to do stuff with Al Sharpton, I don't work with Al anymore. But back then, when I did work with him, we jumped in and got involved in a case with a lady by the name of Kelly Williams Bolar. And
Yes.
you remember Kelly? Yeah. And Kelly Williams Bolar was arrested because she sent her child to a school that was outside of her district, right? And she used her father's address and sent her child to a better school, and that offended me. It still does, because it's insanity that this white supremacist society that hasn't paid reparations to Black people, that's stuck so many Black people in poverty, will then get mad at you and try to punish you when you try to sneak and send your child to a better school. Yet at the same time, while simultaneously telling you that every immigrant from any surrounding country or planet can come to the U.S. and get everything Black people ain't never got. But that's beside the point. But with that being said, though, I remember how harshly they treated Kelly before, during, and after everything that happened. And in fact, just not even a fun fact, an interesting fact. She got very bad advice. Like we held a rally down there for her, and I came down there, and Reverend Sharpton came down there. So all the media was there. The whole country was paying attention. Every media outlet in the country wanted to talk to her, but the people in her town had told her, I guess she had this lawyer, this white lawyer, that was basically telling her, don't talk to the media, just, don't make it worse, whatever. So she did that. She wouldn't return our calls or whatever. And I remember that we did this rally without her because she wasn't participating. Well, then after the problem was that they were waiting to get her after we left. They're like, okay, we can't touch you now, but as soon as the attention's gone, we're going to hammer your Black ass. So literally after she left, they put her father in jail in addition to her, and just, obliterated their family. And I remember she was trying to call all these media outlets. Like the thing about situations like this is you got to move while the iron's hot. So when all the media wanted to talk to her, she wasn't available. But then suddenly she's like, okay, I want to talk now. But USA Today is not returning my call. I'm like, yeah, that's because that's what they do. They shine the spotlight on one situation after another. You got about 3 days. And if you don't move in 3 days, then they're going to move on to something else. And I think that, so I thought about that whole situation, particularly since it was in Ohio. It involved a single mother trying to do something for her children and criminalizing that, which I hope that most of us can agree that that's a problem. But it also speaks to me in terms of, like you mentioned, Zaki, about white supremacy and the lack of a social safety net, right?
That's
Our
right.
society creates the situations where these things happen.
They create the environment, right?
Yeah. So I thought about that, and so here's what I'm thinking too, Zakia. So in terms of practical solutions to something like this, our government isn't very good at getting anything done. I mean, seriously, like when we talk about the government coming through to protect its citizens, they can't even protect the Capitol. If they can't even protect their capital, the most secure building in the country, then what makes us think they can protect us? I've lost faith. I don't know. Help me regain my confidence in this failing government to do anything right for anybody. Zakia.
Shoot, I'm the wrong one to help you regain your faith because I'm right there with you. Listen, I do think that we have a responsibility to fight, especially the criminalization part. I do think as a community, though, and remember I mentioned this when I was on with you earlier this year, and I said things are going to get worse before they get better. I said, I keep talking about this. We're moving into a different economy. Things are particularly going to get worse for people who are already struggling, for people who are already at the margins, which means a lot of us, which means this young woman that we're talking about, right now. So what I said was that Black folks need to become, more insular insofar as creating benevolent and mutual aid societies, and also doing things that the Black Panthers did. One of the things that I was reminded about watching Judas over the weekend with my husband and my family was that, wow, we did have our own clinics. The Black Panthers did have their own schools. Like, they created all of these things, and we did this for ourselves because, again, the government had neglected us. And I would argue that, economically, Black people are in a much different position than we have been in a very long time in this country. When you look at access, to more economic gain, not for all of us. Let's just be really clear. I mean, clearly we're talking about this working class woman. The vast majority of Black folks are poor and working class. However, the gulf between the poor and working class and the ultra wealthy is much wider. And you do have a few Black folks up there. So I think that is incumbent upon us, and it's really an emergency that we get back to this idea of benevolent societies and mutual aid, where we're doing things for ourselves in the spirit of the Black Panthers, and certainly after the turn of the century, post chattel slavery.
So let me ask you this, Jeff.
Just
Jeff,
to go off what Ms. Zakiya
Oh,
said, though, it's beautiful that you brought up, because I'm really into the Black Panthers, right? Like, I'm really into the movement. I watched the movie as well. And one thing that I will say is that the Black Panthers in a lot of ways were ahead of the time, right? Like, the Black Panthers were doing these things in the 60s, right? Talking about a lot of economic driven things, a lot of things that we hear Dr. Claude Anderson, a lot of Black young brilliant scholars say today in 21, they were saying in 69, right? Like, we're saying in 68 and 67 and things like that. One thing though, we have to prepare for now, because I see the emergence of the Black scholar. I see the emergence of Black people getting into economics and the stock market, and less in the integration and more into finances, right? But just like how they did the Panthers, the same thing is going to happen to us, right? Like, they're going to try to mute you. They're going to try to censor you. They're going to try to infiltrate your systems and tear you down from the bottom. I mean, from the bottom up, right? Like that shouldn't surprise anyone. But I think the reason why I say the Black Panthers are ahead of their time is that I think it is more accessible and it's harder to do today. The reason why I say that is because you didn't have social media, you didn't have the technology that you have, you didn't have the internet, and it's widespreading information very fast, right? Like, this is how fast things work. I was talking to Doc about some finance stuff or whatever. He had the Wall Street Trapper on this week. Wall Street Trapper was on a podcast called Earn Your Leisure, and then Earn Your Leisure was on The Breakfast Club, and then Dr. Boyce has also been on The Breakfast Club, right? So just think how like these things spread, and all these same people are preaching the same message. Which Dr. Claude Anderson.
I'm a subscriber to Earn Your Leisure.
Exactly, it's finance, it's powernomics, and me and Dr. Boyce did a podcast the other day about like how LeBron James made all of this money outside of playing basketball, right? How you can double your money from the market, from being invested, from doing things like that. And so what I'm seeing is, while the Black Panthers were ahead of their time, is they weren't able to mass communicate, right? Like, they weren't able to get on a Zoom call or StreamYard or whatever and talk to people and spread this message. They were doing it as best they could, but it was infiltrated and ultimately torn down, right? The way we're able to do it now is through communication, through technology, and we're able to continue to build these things up. And that's why I think it's beautiful to watch, but we have to continue to work towards it. It's going, but the pushback is coming though. Like, it's not just going to be all fun and dandy. And
absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
The pushback is there, but you just have to be prepared for it.
Yeah, they're going to be historically consistent. Believe that.
Everybody who's watching, we're speaking about Shaina Bell. Shaina Bell is a 24-year-old single mother who was just arrested for leaving her kids at home while she went to work. She left them in a Motel 6 that they were staying in, and she went to go work at Little Caesars. That's where her job is. And the country's been outraged. Thank goodness for her. $100,000 was raised for her, which I think is a wonderful thing. I think it's great that people came through for her. Now, what I will say, is, in terms of us figuring this out, is this: I'm a problem solver. I just, maybe it's because math is my background, right? So I like to solve problems. I'm not real good at confronting the same problem over and over again and not solving it. That's why I'm not very good at being a Negro. I'm not a very good Negro. Because that Negroidian culture sometimes leads us to simply complain about the same stuff we've been complaining about for 50 years and not do anything about it. So here's what I see. I see a 24-year-old mom with a 10-year-old daughter. Now, one thing that math taught me was that 24 minus 10 is 14. So that leads me to wonder, what's the whole situation here, right? I live in Chicago. We got a lot of that, the 14-year-old mom, the 15-year-old mom, 16-year-old mom. And then we also have a lot of scenarios where two people get together long enough to make a baby, but they're not even together by the time the baby's born anymore, right? Which is an unfortunate bastardization of the love and romance process, right? Because sex has been so cheapened, and in the media they're telling you all about popping that WAP and all this other stuff. People don't understand that on the other side of WAP is a baby, right? The WAP part is exciting, the baby part is not. And I think that we have to be honest in terms of having those conversations, because I'm sitting here looking at this and I'm thinking, gosh, that is a terrible situation. And I don't even think you have to assess any blame anywhere. But I'm like, how do we get to that point? That I think that's the question that, and this involves everybody, not just Shayna and the father that made the babies, but the parents who raised those children to make those babies. And what has happened to the Black family that this is so common? There are probably a million different people in the exact same situation. Right. And I can't even talk. My mom will tell me about some situations we were in back in the day. And
Yeah.
And so I just kind of think that maybe this is a call for hitting the reset button on how we view relationships and family. Right. Our kids are getting screwed. Our kids get screwed. We screw over our children because we don't even put the energy into figuring out how we're going to make this thing work. Like literally every day.
Yeah, marriage is hard for sure.
Yeah, every day when I'm thinking about whether it's marriage or even just being in a relationship, I ain't even judging people about being married. I don't care if people get married or not. They can do what they want. But literally every single day, I remind myself that this whole thing I got going on with this family situation and these children that depend on me, this ain't about you, boys. This ain't about how happy you are or whether or not Alicia hurt your feelings and made you mad or you feel like you're being mistreated. No, it's like, no, I'm part of I'm a piece to a puzzle. And if that piece gets removed, the whole puzzle falls apart. Right. So I'm staying in the goddamn puzzle. I'm not gonna, like I told Alicia, I said, you do understand that marrying me means you can't leave me, right? Because if you leave me, I'm going with you.
My husband and I said the same thing. We made the same commitment to each other. Like, this is forever. You know that, right? Like, this is forever.
Yeah.
So death do us part.
And I think that's important, for those that really want to see a lot of this from a different angle. You got to realize that your family is your first institution. When the white man did a number on you and wanted to destroy you, he said, let's go destroy that family. We we want no structure in the Black household because structured people are the ones who lead revolutions. Unstructured people make excellent slaves. Divided people make excellent slaves. So we want to feed into this gender war. We want to feed into this bullshit.
I hate that gender war.
Gangster rap, Black men wanting to kill each other. We're going to feed into a lack of education. We're going to feed into sexual irresponsibility. We're going to feed it, applaud it, tell you that this is progress. And then you're going to wonder why every single time when the dust settles, you are in last place. So that's what I'm seeing there, and maybe I'm thinking too much about it. I don't know.
No, I'm with you. I'm rocking with you on that. I always look at things from a macro level. I'm always viewing things from a systemic level, but I have to appreciate the fact that you're bringing in this piece about the family structure, and certainly we have some responsibility in that because there's some decisions that we need to be clear about, that we're making. It wasn't lost on me that she's 24 and has a 10-year-old. We don't know the circumstances of that. And so, there's certainly been a breakdown in the family, and clearly the environmental factors and, COINTELPRO and all these other things, have influenced just the economic deprivation of generations. I am a childhood survivor of the crack epidemic. I publicly talk about that now. For a very long time, I kept that to myself because I was actually very ashamed about that. I didn't have my mom or my dad talk about the family structure. I was actually raised in the rural South in Alabama by my great grandparents and my great aunts and uncles, because in the early 80s, crack took out my mama and my daddy, right? And so, now we 40 something and all of that, but that's an entire generation of kids that was impacted by the so-called war on drugs and crack specifically, that tore apart a lot of families. So a big part of my reason and the fuel that I have and the love that I have for Black people is ensuring that I do what I need to do, number one, for my family inside of my home and make sure that my husband and I are doing what we need to do for our children. but also in my work every day. Number one, holding this government responsible. Number one, we are tax-paying citizens like everybody else, and then number two, also making sure that we are viewing things that are from our own perspective, meaning that we are giving a high value to African epistemology, meaning our own ways of thinking and our own knowledge, and not necessarily taking white and Eurocentric ideas and taking them as our own. That's been an entire process for myself. And I continue to work at undoing a lot of the socialization and whitewashing of our history and all of those different things. So we have a lot of work to do. Absolutely.
Yes, we do. Jeff, so let me ask you this, Jeff Lightsey Jr. Just for the sake of solutions, if Shayna, and again, there's no, I have no interest in criticizing Shayna, of course, and I my heart goes out more so for children first, right? Because adults, we make adult choices, we end up in adult situations, but with children, that's really where my heart goes first. What do you think, Jeff, in terms of kind of, instead of seeing it as, because here's what I see, right? Something terrible happens to a Black person, and it's maybe because of government policy or something like that, and we say that's terrible that happened to a Black person, and the government should do a better job, right? And I because I believe white people don't care about us, it makes me say, is there something more there? Like, is there something that can be considered in terms of culture that would allow us to minimize the likelihood that those things sort of happen? Or do we just accept the fact that that you're gonna have millions of these situations with children without the daddy around? Because again, because I'm gonna tell you, we have both parents in the house, and that makes a difference. When Alicia was at work all day long, and I was here, I said, I got this. I got the kids, right? And I can't imagine trying to do that without us working together. So what do you think in terms of how can we talk about this in terms of challenging our culture without it sounding like we're being insensitive or mean? Or because there are some people out there that will hear something like this and say, oh, you're bashing single mothers. No, actually, you're helping single mothers, because I don't think single mothers should have to be single mothers. So my thought is, how do I avoid my daughters even ending up in a situation like that? What are your thoughts, Jeff?
I think, first of all, we must challenge our government officials as far as the incarceration rate of our men, right? Like a lot of the reason why some of these women are single is because their husbands or their boyfriends or their fathers or their uncles or their brothers have been locked up on a lot of these things that are now legal, right? When we're talking about weed and we're talking about the decriminalization of all drugs in a place like Oregon, a lot of our people are in jail for cannabis or weed, which is now essentially legal almost everywhere, right? Like in Illinois, you can go get a weed wherever you at. Miss Zakia, I don't know where you're at, but if you're in DC, I think is what you said one time, you can go get weed down the street. California, now and it's only becoming more and more legal because of the pandemic, but we have hundreds of thousands of our men that are behind bars for something that they're now making legal almost nationwide. So it starts with that. It also starts with the teaching of our children and not allowing the TV to teach your children, right? Not allowing the internet to teach your kids, right? Because if you just listen to music, I'm gonna just be honest, I love rap music, but a lot of the rap music talks about, getting as many women as possible. You see the athletes with all different kinds of women all over Instagram and things like that. So if you allow the internet, or if you allow social media to teach your child, then that's what they're going to glorify. They're going to glorify those kinds of things. I think the mindset of our culture is shifting, but it needs to be done at an exponential rate. We need to start uplifting the scholars, uplifting the people that are empowering financial literacy in our community, and not uplift the athlete as much. Right? Not uplift the guy, the rapper as much, not uplift the entertainer, the comedian as much, but actually the people that are, pouring, is giving us nutrients as far as how to get out of our current situation. I think there is a leaf that is being turned. It just needs to continue to happen, and it starts at home with your home base. But so, like, it's not here to knock, like you said, single mothers or miss the lady from Ohio or anything, but it's just to work within yourself. I think if every single viewer here on this platform right now takes that time to work within themselves, it can slowly but surely continue to manifest and trickle down throughout our entire community.
Everybody who just came in, we're talking about Shayna Bell. Shayna Bell's a single mother out in Ohio who was arrested for leaving her kids at home in their hotel room, which is at a Motel 6. I'm speaking with Zakia Sang.
Sankara Jabbar. It ain't
Thank
that
you.
hard, boys. Come on now.
I'm trying. I'm so bad. Do you know I'm terrible with names, Zakia? I literally have to write your name down. I think I'm just stupid and crazy, but Zakia Sankara Jabbar, and I'm a practice.
Perfect.
There you go. All right, and Jeff Lightsey Jr. and we're here on Your Black World TV. Please hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. If you haven't done it yet, please do that because we're building Black media. And to just point, we need to stop letting the stupid people lead the community. You know, in fact, I think I hate the term Black leader nowadays because so many of our Black leaders are literally selected for us. And they're literally the worst. It's like literally they grab the worst, dumbest people, most ineffective people and put them out front. And then everybody says, oh, that's our leader. Well, if dumb people are leading you, then you're going to do dumb stuff. You're going to end up in dumb situations. You're going to have dumb outcomes. So let's
keep doing the same dumb things for 60 years, right? Like you keep running the same circle. I feel like the definition of insanity is do the same thing over and over and expect different results. But if we're crying for the same thing in 21 and we're crying for in 65, like something's got to click. At some point, you got to be like, whoa, why in the world are we still fighting for the same thing that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all these people, you know, that you tell us that they died for, but we're fighting for the same thing in 21. Like there's some sort of progress has to be made in 60 years. But it seems like it hasn't happened fast enough. And it's because I think a lot of the messaging that was preached to us during the civil rights movement and the next generation of the civil rights movement wasn't things that actually were beneficial. They were beneficial to certain individuals and beneficial, you know, certain symbolism that was put out there, but it wasn't beneficial for the overall group.
Yeah, well, you know, Dr. Claude Anderson did a good job of breaking that down and explaining, you know, that how the bad Black leadership kind of came to be. And he was talking about how the pastors used to preach that whole pie in the sky, like, you know, God wants you to be a good slave type stuff. So they would go to the pastors. And then when they stopped going to the pastors, I think he said in the 60s, they stopped going to the pastors as much and started actually putting Black elected officials in office and saying, you know, these are some of your Black leaders now. And he showed that how they went from about 103 Black elected officials, maybe in like 1962, to 8,000 Black elected officials 30 years later. And there was no progress in Black quality of life in terms of incarceration rates, employment rates, wealth levels, education, none of that. And so effectively, we just get a lot of bad leadership. You know, we have a lot of really ridiculous people that are put at the top of the pile. And I think that we have to fight against that. So I like Zakia, if you could, before we head out of here, give us a final statement in terms of how we can not just talk about what happened with Miss Bell from a point of, we're certainly not talking about it from a point of gossiping about her life. We all wish her the best. We're also not talking about it from a point of just complaining about what people are and are not doing. I think also maybe we can learn something and grow and evolve as a result of this conversation. So share something with us that'll help us learn, grow, and evolve in terms of how we can live better lives as a result of the feelings that we're having about this right now.
Absolutely. I think we need to, and thanks for always for this platform to come and discuss these important issues that's happening in our community and people in our community. One of the things that I would love to see us do is to become a lot more loving towards each other and extend a lot more grace. I agree with you, the gender warring and all of those different things. I think we should participate a lot less in those kinds of things and participate in things that are edifying, participate in things that are going to increase, you know, our value of living in all areas of people activity. So that's my hope. I do think that, you know, as we continue to see, you know, this economy evolve, that we're also going to have to get really, really creative, and we're going to have to figure out how to take care of ourselves. One of the things my husband and I have been talking about recently, he's a member of the NOI and is FOI, and we have this survival kit that the Nation of Islam put together, and everything that's happening in Texas right now, I reminded my husband about it. I said, oh, where's that list, honey? I said, we need to make sure we have everything on that list, right? So these are things, and I'm not trying to scare people. Like, this is stuff that's happening, right? And I have to remind people, I predicted this in January. I was telling people that we would be surprised at some of the things that's going to happen in 2021. But it's showing us that we really, really have to get serious about this whole idea of doing for self. Clearly, the government is not coming to save us. Boyce, I don't know if you saw, but there was a viral tweet, Facebook post going around from this mayor who has since resigned in Texas that said, yeah, I don't know. Look, y'all, the government ain't getting ready to do nothing for y'all. You better do it for yourself. And to me, while I hate the way in which he said that, he's literally saying what a whole lot of politicians think. They're just not going to say it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if we know this, in my mind, like we have this kind of knowledge, we really do need to be thinking about, okay, what is a contingency plan if something goes wrong? You know what I'm saying? So I really want us to start having more intentional conversations about how we take care of us. And those of us who have a little bit more, than others, then we also need to be willing to not just have grace, but to also share the little bit of wealth that we do have. I'm ready and willing, and I'm ready to be also with other like minds to make it happen. And I want to let you know, boys, I can talk a little bit too when it comes to this stock market thing. I've been dibbling and dabbling, and I also wanted to introduce you to Mark Monroe from the Come Up series. I want you to learn that role and force strategy. So remind me that we need to talk about that offline.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. And I know some people in here are asking about your list. So maybe if your husband wants to share the list, that would be good. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, there we go. So yeah,
survival kit.
So we got
the Nation of Islam put this together years ago. My husband just walked past. I don't know, but it's literally like there's a list like for first aid for survival, necessary tools for survival, like things like having a bike, repair kits for the bike, like kerosene heaters. Who remembers those? Like I remember growing up in Alabama, that's what we had was a kerosene heater. When the last time you see a kerosene heater, right? Like these are things like we're going, I hate to say it, but I'm telling you, we're saying what's happening in Texas, and these people are literally without, electricity for 2 or 3 days now, without water. Yeah, that's crazy.
Water. Yeah, that's pretty terrible. Sheesh. My heart goes out to anybody who
Me too.
Has loved ones out there, or maybe you're out there yourself. God bless you. I hope you stay safe. So, Jeff, your parting thoughts.
I think we just have to continue to, like Ms. Zakia said, to continue to work on ourselves. If I had to give some, I hope the best for Ms. Brown down in Ohio. I hope that she is able to, because this is can be traumatic, right? Like this story going viral, people talking about your story on national television, whether they're supporting you or bashing you, like you're the talk of the town, the talk of the internet or whatever. So I pray for her mental health and the kids' mental health, and I hope that they get all the help that they need, whether it's 100,000 or more, or whatever. So, I'm wishing her the best. But as far as this community, this is not just specific to Ms. Brown, but just our community in itself. We need to continue to build our families and work on ourselves. I think that will solve a lot of problems because, like I said, your oppressor is not going to be here to save you, right? Like the government is not going to save you, like Ms. Zakia said. It's proven throughout history, right? Like whether you watch the Judas and the Black Messiah that's taking place in 1960s or, whatever you watch, the latest whatever, through the police or whatever in 2021, like they're not going to come to save you. So you have to save yourself. And the way you save yourself is you do it economically. Take whatever money you can, invest it, and let your money work for you, and then move on and teach. Don't just hold the information for yourself. Teach each other, teach your families, teach everybody. And I think that's how we continue to build our community. So that is my parting thoughts.
All right, there you go. Build our community. So everybody type the word build. That's our last word. That's our word for today. The word build. Put build in the chat if you get what we're saying. I want to say thank you very much to Zakia Sankara Jabbar.
Always glad to be with you, brother.
I was saying it in a smart aleck way to show you that I have it. I practice it in my head. And Jeff Lightsey Jr. It's great to see both of you. And thank you all for hanging out with us. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button, share, subscribe button, and also follow Zakia and follow Jeff. These are smart Black people
Absolutely.
We need to create our own heroes. We need to support our own people that are doing good things for the community. So hashtag be one. Everybody remember to be Black first, and God bless you. We will see you all very, very soon. Take care now. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.